I woke to the sound of metal clanging against metal, the sharp rhythm echoing through the courtyard outside. Someone was shouting instructions, their voice hoarse but energetic, and for a moment I thought I was dreaming. Then the smell hit me. Coal smoke, damp concrete, and boiled cabbage, and my heart lurched violently in my chest. I sat up too fast, dizziness washing over me, and stared at the unfamiliar ceiling that was, in truth, painfully familiar. Cracks spidered across the plaster in the exact same pattern I had memorized decades ago. A faded propaganda poster hung crookily above a wooden desk, its corners curling inward with age. On the desk sat a green thermos and a stack of notebooks tied with string. I didn't need to look at the calendar to know the year, but my eyes still drifted to it, locking onto the bold red print. March 1978. My hands began to shake. I had not imagined it. I had come back. In my last life, this was the year I had thrown everything away for a man named Daniel Wu. He had been my fiancé, a disciplined officer with sharp eyes and an even sharper sense of self-importance. People admired him. Leaders praised him. And I loved him with a devotion so complete it bordered on self-erasure. When he told me it would be better if I gave up my factory recommendations so he could focus fully on his career, I agreed. When he asked me to delay marriage because his future depended on appearances, I waited. When he quietly transferred opportunities meant for me to his childhood sweetheart, Clara Feng, I told myself it was only temporary, that love required sacrifice. I learned far too late that sacrifice, when offered to the wrong person, only teaches them how little you're worth. I stayed behind while he moved forward. I worked temporary jobs, cared for his family, and measured my days by his letters, each one shorter and more distant than the last. By the time he married Clara openly, I was no longer even angry, just hollow. I raised our child alone after he decided fatherhood didn't fit his trajectory. And when that child grew up and chose him over me, I finally understood how thoroughly I had lost. I died quietly, unnoticed, with nothing but regret for company. And now, fate had dragged me back to the exact moment where the first wrong choice waited to be made. There was a knock at the door. The production team leader called my name and reminded me about the recommendation list meeting that afternoon. My stomach tightened. This was it. The meeting where I had once stood up and withdrawn my own name, smiling like a fool while Daniel watched with approval. I washed my face slowly, staring at my reflection, forcing myself to remember how that smile had felt like a knife pressed against my ribs. By the time I stepped into the meeting room, my mind was clear. When my turn came and they asked if I had anything to add, I stood up and said I would be keeping my recommendation. The room went silent. Someone laughed awkwardly. The leader frowned. Daniel, sitting in the corner, turned sharply to look at me, disbelief flashing across his face. I met his gaze steadily. For the first time I did not shrink. He confronted me that night, irritation barely concealed beneath forced calm. He asked if I understood what I was doing, reminded me how sensitive this stage of his career was, how my ambition might complicate things for us. I listened without interrupting, then told him there was no us if my entire future had to be placed on hold for his comfort. The words stunned him. He told me I was being unreasonable. I told him I was being honest. When he left, slamming the door behind him, I sat down and felt something strange bloom in my chest. Not fear, not grief, but relief. Life did not suddenly become easy after that. If anything, it became harder. The factory floor was unforgiving, and the higher I climbed, the more resistance I faced. Men questioned my competence openly. Supervisors tested me relentlessly. I failed more than once, went home exhausted and doubting myself, but I did not retreat. I learned how systems worked, how favors were traded, how to speak firmly without appearing aggressive, how to let results speak when words failed. Progress came slowly, but it came. And with each small victory, the version of myself who had once begged for scraps faded further into memory. I met Marcus Lee by accident on a rain-soaked afternoon when a transport truck broke down near the plant. He was a maintenance officer temporarily assigned to logistics, his uniform worn, his speech awkward, his manners almost painfully sincere. He helped me carry materials out of the rain without asking who I was or what I did, apologized repeatedly for inconveniencing me, and when I thanked him, He flushed as if no one had done so before. In my previous life, I had brushed past men like him without a second thought, too consumed by Daniel's shadow to notice quiet decency. This time I noticed everything. We crossed paths again and again, never dramatically, always naturally. He listened more than he spoke. He never mocked my ambition or felt threatened by it. When I told him pieces of my past, not the rebirth, but the disappointment, he didn't offer platitudes. He only said that if I chose him, he would choose me back without conditions. I married him not because it was grand or impressive, but because for the first time, love felt steady instead of sharp. Years passed. Reform came. Opportunities shifted. I moved with the tide instead of clinging to what was familiar. Marcus studied, tested, failed, and tried again, his path slow but unwavering. We built a life that was not glamorous but solid. And when Daniel crossed my path again years later, his career stalled and his eyes filled with something dangerously close to regret, I understood the final truth. Rebirth had not been about revenge. It had been about choosing differently when it mattered, and trusting that a quiet, self-earned future was worth more than any promise that required me to disappear.